Hey everyone, it's Marie here again at Nicole Designs. I'm going to be doing a really simple card today. I'm using the Sunny Days Ahead stencil from scrapbook.com, and I really wanted to watercolor this sort of sunset or sunrise kind of image here. And so there's a few different ways you can watercolor with your stencils. If you have a pixie spray that you can spray on your pencil or stencil, make it sticky and stick it down to your paper, you can watercolor right over the stencil. I don't have any of that spray, but this design was bold enough that I could go ahead and trace over all of the lines with a pencil. And so that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to do a little bit of freehand painting over that design. So I'm really just using the stencil as a template to put my lines down, and then I'll do a little bit of watercoloring. So with my pencil here, I am just adding some light pencil lines around the stencil. I want to make sure that they're really light so that as I paint over them, they're not going to show too much. You can go ahead and erase the pencil lines afterwards, but with my sand eraser, sometimes it takes off a little bit of that color of the watercolor as well. So I find it's kind of easiest if you just do a really light pencil line, and then you don't have to worry about erasing it later. It kind of will just blend in with that watercolor. So I hope you can kind of see the lines here. I've gone ahead and traced around that whole stencil, and I'm just going to add some color using some Nuvo Aqua Flow brush markers, and these are basically liquid watercolor inside of a marker. I have all of the colors here. I've swatched them out, so it's really easy for me to go ahead and look at the colors that are available and pick out the ones that I want to put onto my sunrise or sunset. I've picked more of a warm orangish red and then a warm yellow, and I'm just going to be blending these two together. I'm doing some really simple watercoloring here. I'm just doing two colors, and I'm just going to have them blend in together. So it's going to start with the orange and go out to the yellow. So to apply these watercolors, I'm just putting a little bit of color down onto my tonic glass mat, and I like to pick it up with a water brush and just brush it onto my paper. I'm using some watercolor paper here today. This is Arch's Cold Press, but you can use any kind of watercolor paper that you might have. I like to apply it with a water brush or a paintbrush instead of taking it straight to the paper, because I can kind of control the amount of pigment that I'm putting down easier than if I put it down with just the brush. If you take it straight from brush straight to the paper, it puts down quite a bit of color. It's really saturated, and if you're going for that look, that's great, but if you kind of want to build up your color slowly, you might want to add it with a paintbrush and just add your color on the side, pick it up and add it to your paper with a paintbrush. I know I've mentioned before, but it's always easier to put more color on. It's not as easy to take color away, so that's why I like to add my color slowly and just build up those colors. So I had to stop painting a little bit and come back a little bit later, so my lighting has kind of changed. It looks a little bit more red right here, and my color is dry, but you can always come back later and start adding some more color on. Even though it's dry, if you add some water to it, it'll start to move a little bit more again. And these watercolor brushes, they work really well. They're not professional grade watercolor or anything, so sometimes they do like to kind of stay on your watercolor paper. They kind of like to stain where you put them, and don't always move around quite as well. But if you come back in with some water later, they will kind of start to blend together a little bit as well. So they are easy to work with, and like I mentioned, I prefer working with the color off to the side and bringing it onto my paper using a water brush or a paintbrush, rather than putting it on my paper with just straight out of the brush. So I'm adding my orange to the sun, and I'm adding it to the bottom of these little sun rays here because I want this orange to kind of blend out into the yellow as I put the yellow on here. So I'm just kind of adding some more orange at the bottom and just kind of adding more color or more water as I go up, so that the color kind of fades out, and I'm bringing in my yellow now to just blend these colors together. So I'm doing the same thing I did with my orange. I'm just squeezing a little bit of that color out onto my glass mat. If I find I need some more water, I can either refill my water brush, or since I didn't want to get up and go over to my sink, I just squirted a little bit of water onto my glass mat with a little spray bottle, and then I'm just going to bring that yellow and paint right over the orange and just pull that color out so that it starts to blend together and you're getting an orange blending into the yellow. So you can kind of see how those colors are blending together and just fading out to create more of a goldenish, orangish, sunset kind of theme. Now you can also use this stencil with different mediums, maybe like a paste or ink blending or something. I think those would look really pretty, but I saw this image and I really just wanted it to be watercolored straight onto a card. And you can see you really don't need to do a whole lot of other creating with this stencil. It's so bold that you can put it on a card base, stamp a sentiment onto it, and you pretty much have a card ready to go. So I'm making sure I'm just going to go ahead over all of these areas, making sure I'm filling it in with my color, and I'm really loving how this looks as that watercolor dries. I like to keep going down to the bottom of my little sun rays here and just keep pulling out that color and that water so that it can kind of blend together a little bit better. And I don't get all of those harsh lines. And as it dries, it kind of blends a little bit more. So if you're not quite happy with it at first, maybe let it dry for a few minutes and come back to it and look at it again, because that water, that pigment will kind of move around still as it dries. Now, I'm kind of done with my little rays of sunshine here, but I'm going to go back over the sun on the bottom and add some yellow so I can just get all of these colors looking like they fit together, they coordinate together. And I'm leaving a little spot there. It kind of looks like a highlight. And I think this watercoloring is pretty much done. Now at this point you can kind of see those pencil lines, but if you don't know they're there, they really don't stick out all that much. I tried erasing them a little bit, but it was kind of pulling some of that color off of my card background, and I didn't want that to happen, so I just left them. They're not in the way, they're not in your face, and I think if you don't know they're there, you're not even going to notice. So for my sentiment, I am using this Sunshine Sentiment from scrapbook.com's Cards for Kindness stamp set. This stamp set has all kinds of different sentiments, like thank you, thinking of you, sending sunshine, happy birthday, all kinds of general sentiments that you would use on your typical cards that you would send through the mail. So I thought this sunshine sentiment went really well with this stencil, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp it about 3 times in my MISTI so I can get a nice crisp sentiment here. And then after this one is stamped out, I'm going to add the little sending right above there. So it says sending sunshine. Now I want to pop this card panel up onto my card base. So I'm cutting some scrapbook.com foam adhesive. This is their 2-inch wide foam adhesive, and I'm just cutting it down to some strips to put it on the back of my card panel so I can adhere it to my card base. I really love how the backing paper peels off so easily on this foam adhesive. It just makes my life so much better. So I'm going to go ahead and line this up on my card base and just press it down just to pop up this front panel a little bit. Now you could put your card together and call it a day, but I wanted to add a few die cut clouds and some of these sparkly sequins here because I thought it needed a few golden sequins and a few clear sequins to give it a little bit more glimmer. This I like to imagine this as a sunset, a golden sunset. So I'm putting some gold sequins on here and some clear ones around the clouds. And I just like how it finishes off this card. You've got that bold sunset in the background with a few clouds and a few sparkly sequins. And I think it's just a really colorful, bold card that you could send to a friend and just help them smile a bit. So I hope you liked today's video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you liked it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Otherwise, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and tap that bell for notifications so you never miss another video from me. Otherwise, I think that's about all I have for you today. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope I will see you again in another video. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.